What's going on, everyone? So Courteney Cox is back. It is official. She confirmed it herself. Courteney Cox has recently confirmed she will be returning for Scream 7. I'm the longest running Scream Queen. So I guess I can't stop now. It's great news, right? We were all kind of waiting around. There have been rumors since it was announced that she was going to be back. She had that interview like a month or so ago now where she was kind of like, we'll see. I'm not officially signed on yet. And then it's kind of like, oh, is she not coming back? Is she not, we all knew she was coming back. Now, there was the argument that, in Scream 4, she wanted to be killed off. She wanted to kind of put it at the end, and she could have justified it and been like, hey, look, I gave you two more. I didn't even want to be here after Scream 4. I gave you 2 Screams, so that's it. I'm done. And potentially go elsewhere. But I don't know. I believe she'd be back. I know many of you believe she'd be back at some point. I think that was kind of the obvious answer. It's just kind of like, when is she going to sign on? When are they going to make it official? Now she's officially signed on. I hope they do right by her character. I'm excited that Courteney Cox is back. Gale Weathers is in it. Look, I have talked about Gale Weathers constantly on this channel and throughout the course of this channel's history. And I have said numerous times that I believe that she has had the best character arc of all the characters, including Sid, right? And she even said herself, she's the longest running Scream Queen, right? She is. She's been in every Scream movie. She's the only one that's been in every Scream movie, right? But as we saw in Scream 6, they did a terrible job of having her be an integral part of the film. She served zero purpose. She shouldn't have been in that movie at all. The only thing she did was find the shrine room, and Detective Bailey himself says that he was going to reveal it. So the one thing that she did wasn't even necessary, right? Because Detective Bailey was going to do it at some point. It wasn't like, now if it would have been something where she revealed the shrine room to everybody, and that was like a big wrench in the plans for Ghostface, right? And now Ghostface had to change plans and pivot, and it kind of just messed things up, right? That would have been one thing, but that's not what happened, right? The Ghostface was literally going to show them that, right? So my point is, I'm all for having Gale in these films. I want her in these films. Said the same thing about Sydney. But the writers have not done a good job of building on the legacy characters. My hope is that Kevin Williamson's back, and so we'll get a better Sydney and Gale storyline. We'll get a better Sydney and Gale story arc, right? And supposedly, based on rumors, supposed to be like this 70-30 thing, going to be kind of Gale and Sydney teaming up to take down Ghostface, go after Ghostface. Sydney's daughter's supposed to be in it, all that stuff, right? And that's great. But I don't want to see Gale in the movie just to say she's in the movie. Right? I want there to be a purpose. I want there to be a point. I want her character to have actual reason and logic, right? I don't want her to just be kind of floating around. They did that. I mean, even Sydney in Scream 5, right? Again, served no purpose, no point. You didn't need her in that movie at all. That movie works the exact same without Sydney, right? Yeah, it was cool to see her, shoot through the door and go on board and all that stuff. There were things that you could see Sydney doing, but her putting on the tracker. As soon as she puts on the tracker, she literally looks at Gale and goes I learned from the best, right? Gale could have put the tracker on. Her, fighting Ghostface and helping to save the day. In hindsight, we knew Mindy was alive. Mindy could have been the one that showed up and saved the day. And that would have tied into the classic Scream, which Randy was originally supposed to be the savior, right? Randy was originally supposed to put an end to Ghostface and push the TV down on Stu, and then him and Sydney were supposed to live happily ever after. That was the original idea. So you would have had a nice little callback even to the classic Scream for those that knew would have known, and those that didn't, right? It would have been a fun Easter egg to find out at some point if you ever found out, right? It just, there was better ways to go about it. But again, Sydney had no purpose, no point. And then Scream 6, again, they didn't even need Sydney in it, right? But they didn't need Gale in it either. So you got to do right by these characters. Got to actually be able to build the story and tell their characters. I don't want Gale and Sydney in the movie just to have Gale and Sydney in the movie and be like, oh, it's cool. I love them. I'm not going to, complain about them, being in the movie. But there needs to be a point. There needs to be a purpose, right? There needs to be reason why they're in the movie. If you want them to just be a quick little cameo, fine. Then have them be a quick little cameo and that's that. But if you're going to try to like pretend like they're huge parts of the film, and you're going to try to pretend like they're needed, and then they're not, then it defeats the point. You might as well build up. I'd rather you spend that time building up other characters, right? Like, so for example, instead of, having the handful of scenes that Gale was in, I would have rather you just build Sam and Tara more, or build Chad more, right? Like, same thing in Scream 5. Instead of bringing Sydney back and doing all that stuff, I would have rather you build, Sam and Tara more, right? Build the characters that you needed more, maybe Mindy more. But, again, like, Gale being back in this film, it's great. She's been in all of them. And we need to continue to see her just expand on her character. I mean, look at her from Scream 96 to Scream 4, really. Right? Look at the progression. Look at the growth, the development of her character. Right? From being just this cutthroat, willing to do whatever it takes to get the scoop. Right? Like, I mean, so much so Randy's even like, what about Gale Weathers? Gale Weathers, right? And that was in Scream 2, but, and he's like, yeah, she stages the news. She reported, right? They staged the news, right? And but it made sense. It was logical. Right? It wasn't something that's like, what? Like, I mean, to Dewey, because he's in love with her, it didn't sound logical, but to all of us, we were like, hey, that's a good point, right? Like, and so, you can see you saw her go from that, where she was ready to just, she would have put on the Ghostface moniker just to be able to solve it, right? Like, whatever it took, to, in Scream 4, being essentially a housewife that has writer's block and isn't really doing anything and is frustrated. It's just, you saw in the growth and development, her loyalty to Dewey. That's why, like, even Scream 5 storyline just made no sense. Like, if they would have done the opposite, then it would have. Right? Like, you could have done the exact same story arc for Gale and Dewey, but just had Gale be the one to leave, not Dewey. Because that defeated the whole purpose. Gale was always the one that ran away. She wanted to leave Woodsboro because, days felt like years, and, 60 minutes too, and, like, Dewey says, like, what's wrong with being Gale Weathers, right? Like, Dewey would have went to and moved heaven and earth for Gale. Right? Like, Dewey never, like, the thought of him leaving never would have changed. He never would have. And the whole big city thing, living in New York, he lived in Hollywood, right? Like, again, it made no sense. But if Gale would have been the one to do it, if they were living in Woodsboro and he was the sheriff and stuff like that, and Gale got an opportunity to do a morning show in New York, and she just left Dewey because Dewey didn't want to leave because he's the sheriff of Woodsboro, and she's just like dips out. Okay, now that makes sense. That's her story arc. It's what she's always done. It's what Dewey's always done. Right? Like, but instead you try to do the opposite. You try to flip the script. But that's my point. The reason I even mention this and highlight this in this Gale video is because it just further shows the lack of understanding of these characters. It shows the lack of proper growth and development of these characters from the current writers and storytellers. Now, again, hopefully with Kevin Williamson in the mix, Kevin Williamson in the fold, he can kind of better right the ship. And there's been several rewrites at this point, which I imagine are probably from Kevin Williamson going like, hey, Gale would never do that, right? Like, Sydney, you can't do this with Sydney. It's just not her character, right? Again, these are all brainchildren of Kevin Williamson. These are all brainchildren of that. So, I want to see the proper growth and development of Gale Weathers. I want to see the proper growth and development of Sidney Prescott. I want them to do right by these characters. I want to see real continued growth. Don't just, have these characters around just to have these characters around. Right? Like let's do something with these characters. Can we please tell a good story with these characters? Can we please, have purpose and reason, really, is what it is. Right? Can we properly have Gale be front and center and have a story where she actually is like Scream 1, 2, 3, 4, where she was part of trying to solve the crimes, trying to take down Ghostface in the thick of it. Had a reason other than she had a lot of self-interest in it, but she still, at the end of the day, would, You know, like Sydney used to say all the time, like, hey, be kind. She saved our lives, right? Like, she was somebody that always kind of, like, she was looking for her best interest, but was still willing to save the people that mattered. And you saw the growth of her and just, like, Sydney's relationship and whatnot, right? Like, continue to build upon that. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel with your thoughts? Do you agree with my points? Do you think, like, you know, yeah, you got to do right by her. You got to actually build her character. You got to tell good, convincing story. Don't just, like, have her in the film, just to have her in the film. Or do you think, like, it doesn't really matter? You know, as long as she's in the movie, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos. Truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.